US may make a deal on Cuba, Trump says. Trump says US will have, very substantial, response if Canada enacts trade deal with China. Guterres UN risks financial collapse. Iran warns US-Israel against making a mistake. Exiled Tibetans choose leaders for lost homeland. US President Donald Trump said on Saturday that he believes the United States can reach an agreement with Cuba, days after threatening to impose tariffs on countries supplying oil to the island. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump repeated his call for Cuba to negotiate with Washington, saying the country's economic crisis could be resolved through a deal. It doesn't have to be a humanitarian crisis, Trump said. He added that Cuba was facing severe difficulties due to a lack of money and oil, after years of reliance on support from Venezuela. Cuba has long depended on Venezuelan oil supplies. In 2025, Venezuela met about one-third of Cuba's daily oil needs, but shipments fell sharply after the United States tightened restrictions and later removed Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power. After Venezuelan supplies declined, Mexico became Cuba's largest oil supplier. However, Reuters reported in January that Mexico is reviewing whether to continue shipments amid concerns it could face retaliation from Washington. Trump said he expected Cuba to approach the United States for talks, arguing that the current situation is very bad for Cuba and unsustainable without external support. US President Donald Trump warned on Saturday that the United States would take strong action if Canada moves ahead with a trade agreement negotiated with China. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump said Washington would respond in a very substantial way if Canada proceeds with the deal. He claimed such an agreement would allow China to gain excessive influence over Canada. "We don't want China to take over Canada," Trump said, adding that the proposed trade deal would put Ottawa at risk. Trump has previously threatened to impose tariffs of up to 100% on Canadian goods if the agreement with China goes ahead, escalating tensions between the longtime allies and raising concerns about a potential trade dispute. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned that the world body is facing a severe financial crisis and could run out of cash by July unless member states urgently pay their dues. In a letter to UN members on Friday, Guterres said the organization risks an imminent financial collapse because some countries have failed to pay their mandatory contributions in full or on time. He warned that unless members meet their obligations, the UN may be forced to overhaul its financial rules. The United Nations has already imposed hiring freezes and spending cuts as a result of chronic budget shortfalls. Despite more than 150 countries paying their contributions, the UN ended 2025 with about $1.6 billion in unpaid dues, more than double the shortfall recorded in 2024. The financial strain has been compounded by actions from the administration of US President Donald Trump, which has reduced funding to some UN agencies and delayed or rejected certain mandatory payments. Trump has repeatedly questioned the relevance of the United Nations and criticized its priorities. Guterres' warning also comes as the UN Security Council remains divided by tensions among the United States, Russia and China, limiting its ability to act on major global issues. Trump has further challenged the UN's role by launching a proposed Board of Peace, which critics say could rival the world body. UN officials also said the organization must return unspent funds to member states, adding to its financial pressures as the crisis deepens. Iran's army chief Amir Hatami has warned the United States and Israel against launching any attack on Iran, saying the country's armed forces are on high alert amid increased US military deployments in the Gulf. Speaking to Iran's official news agency IRNA on Saturday, Hatami said Iran was at full defensive and military readiness and warned that any hostile action would threaten regional security, including that of Israel, which he referred to as the Zionist regime. He also said Iran's nuclear expertise could not be eliminated, responding to remarks by US President Donald Trump that Tehran would seek a deal to avoid American strikes. The warning comes as the United States has deployed a naval strike group to the Middle East, led by the USS Abraham Lincoln, raising fears of a direct confrontation. Iran has said it would respond to any attack with missile strikes on US bases, ships and allies, including Israel. Tensions were further heightened by a series of explosions in Iran on Saturday. One person was killed and 14 injured in a blast at the southern port city of Bandar Abbas, while a separate gas explosion in the southwestern city of Ahaz killed 4 people, according to Iranian media. The causes of the explosions remain under investigation. 2 Israeli officials told Reuters that Israel was not involved. Exiled Tibetans around the world began voting on Sunday in a global election to choose representatives for a government in exile, a rare democratic exercise for a people without a state. Voting is taking place in 27 countries, including India, Nepal, Australia, Europe and North America, but not in China. The election is organized by the Central Tibetan Administration, which is based in the Indian town of Dharamsala. Candidates and voters say the election carries deep symbolic importance. Candidate 1STJan'26 said the vote shows that the Tibetan struggle continues across generations, even in exile. China, which took control of Tibet in 1950, dismissed the election as illegitimate. Beijing's foreign ministry said the Tibetan government in exile is an illegal separatist group and accused it of violating Chinese law. Around 91,000 registered voters have taken part. Many see the election as the most significant democratic moment since the Dalai Lama fled Tibet in 1959, following a failed uprising against Chinese rule. Analysts say the vote highlights the resilience of the Tibetan exile community and its commitment to democratic participation, even though most Tibetans living inside China cannot take part.